let that ill feeling drive your relationship to transgress. And this point, work together, cooperate, collaborate, ala taqwa, ala al-birri wa taqwa, goodness and consciousness of God. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Okay. Let me say, brother, of course, being followers of Islam, lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, our goal is not to collaborate with one another in ithm wal-udwan, but it is, of course, al-birr wa taqwa. Okay. This question looms in the mind of many of us, and it will in our children, hopefully, if we're planting that seed of being cognizant of what's happening in the world. There's that age-old question, is living here itself enough to satisfy complicity in the domestic and foreign policies of a country? That's a much more complex question that requires us to better understand the meaning of citizenship and what it is that we contribute as citizens of a country. That's not what we're talking about today, but I would encourage you to better appreciate what that is and what that means. But in any case, there are still ways that we may be complicit or we may be cooperating in the propagation of al-ithm wal-udwan, of sin and aggression. Okay, 20 years our country has been, at least in Afghanistan, and they've just recently left. Okay. The first thing we need to understand is, if we are cooperating, is to educate ourselves as to exactly what happened. Now, again, there's a political education and there's a socio-political education. What I want to focus our attention on is what was the cost of this experience and how is it potentially that we may have been complicit or we may have even assisted. There's a project that started many years ago at Brown University called the Cost of War Project. My encouragement to all of you is to go study this site. There are resources that are put together that help us visualize and quantify a lot of these things that may not occupy the social consciousness of the people. We are drawn again to the state of Afghanistan because this is the latest iteration of the challenges that country is facing. But 6 months ago, did the world care as much, or were they focused as much on what was happening? I can't speak for other people, but me personally, I was not. But while I was, you can say, distracted, or I was consumed with other things, the reality of what was happening there did not stop. Let me share just a few of the findings from this project. This is an invitation for each of us to go and interact with it. One thing we want to look at is spending. You may say, I'm concerned as to the budgetary issues. Okay, $2.261 trillion. Only the war in Afghanistan. Okay, so this is the cost. Now that's just the monetary cost. That's the budgetary cost. We can call that the least important of all of them, although it has repercussions in the services that are provided to other people that are needy. We don't want to downplay it. That budget could have been allocated to other things. But there's a human cost too. What is the human cost? This is conservative estimates that they make of the deaths that were the result of direct war in Afghanistan. For civilians, 47,245 in Afghanistan, about 24,000 in Pakistan. Opposition fighters, something about 85,000. Journalists, humanitarian workers, about 700, 800 there too. Collectively, there's about 250,000 people, including soldiers on both sides. 250,000 people died directly from the conflict in Afghanistan over these 20 years. It's not a small number of people, right? 250,000 people. So that's just one side of the coin. The other side is the destruction of life, not in the form of death, but everything that life represents. So just recently, this month, they updated some of their findings of the people who have been displaced as a result of these wars. So, in Afghanistan alone, they estimate 5.9 million people have been displaced. And this is not even taking into account what will happen now and what will ensue in the coming days and in the coming months. 6 million people displaced. Displacement is not an easy thing. Maybe I may emigrate to a country out of my autonomy, out of my agency, out of the will to search for a better life. Displacement means you don't have options. You're forced to. You're choosing many times between life and death, certain death and the chance for life, and sometimes it's for any semblance of life. Many of us may have seen the scenes of Afghanis boarding military planes, not inside, but on the small kind of places and vestiges they could find on the exterior. Some of them, before it took off, were able to jump off. Many of them held on because to them, the chances of them surviving on a plane, tens of thousands of feet in there with oxygen deprivation and with the temperature, was better than for them to stay in Afghanistan. That's a frightening thought. And these are frightening scenes. And say, brother, this is not the only case of people who are suffering in the world. Of course not. The question we're asking ourselves is, if and how we were potentially complicit, and then what our responsibility is on the back of something like this. Okay. So now we're looking at all this as it has happened. See, one of the things that cost of war has done is drawn our attention to why wars like these are drawn out this long. And what's the bottom line here? Who won? Notice how we don't judge wars anyway by the victor who destroys an enemy. We don't look at wars anymore, right? Who was the victor in the war in Iraq? I don't know. I know who lost. Everyone. I'm going to draw your attention to two articles that was written by this site. One is called The Growth of the Camo Economy and the Commercialization of the Post-9/11 Wars. There's a paper written by this project in June of 2020, led by Heidi Peltier. She says that post-9/11, we can see this surge in military spending. Naturally, this global war on terror required a larger discretionary budget. But the evolution of these contractors led not only to the budget increasing more than 150%, but it provided an opportunity for people to benefit and gain on the back of other people's misfortunes. See, a contractor comes and says, what do we need to succeed there, right? Now you may think the contractor is the one that's building the bomb or the bullet or the planes. They have their own place. But they also need what? They need plumbing. They need cafeterias. They need housing. They need pillows. They need blankets. All of these things, private contractors come and take that. And they charge more because only a few number of people are suitable and have the relations to win over those contracts. So what happens then? For I who sells blankets to support those who are right now helping the reconstruction of a country like Afghanistan, do I want people to come home and sleep, or do I want them to remain there and sleep? Now, I may care about the cost of human life, but for me to advance my business, think in a capitalistic mentality, I'd like people to stay there as much as they can. I don't care what they do, I just want them to sleep there so they can use my blankets. The same is the case with all the other resources that are required in these projects of bringing democracy and rebuilding the country. After a certain time, the person says, I think we made enough, maybe it's not worth the risk anymore. Let's leave, we'll find the next opportunity because there's no shortage of bad people in the world. Brother, I don't have a company that contracts. I don't build blankets or pillows or bombs or planes or anything. Okay. In my field, working in IT-ish, and especially the region that I live, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, the most desired and coveted jobs are those who contract the military. Again, I'm not talking about the ethics. I'm not saying I'm a pacifist and you should be. I don't even want to get into the ethics of whether going there is wrong or not going there. All I'm drawing our attention to is the way that we may be lending services to the propagation of something that is leading to human loss and human destruction. So if I work as an engineer, my project may, again, not be related directly to what I understand to be damaging. But even if I work on projects that helps the efficiency of these pillows, I am a part of the larger machine, part of the larger system. This is a more complex and advanced layer when we talk about تعاون على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان. I don't know how this kind of like Dallas metro area scenes looks like, where your big employers are. But I know for many Muslims, if they think long and hard, they'll probably find something unsatisfactory or problematic. It'll weigh on their conscience if they know that they're contributing to the bottom line of any of these corporations, who their only loyalty is to the dollar at the cost of any human life, and they don't discriminate. Today it's Afghan. Well, it was for 20 years. It was Iraqi. It will be anyone. They don't care. So you say, how can we collaborate towards goodness? This is the next level. We're talking about building community. Let's start with the relationships that we have with one another. Eventually, we'll get to a point that we even look with a sharper eye towards where we lend our services. Or at the very least, if we feel like that opportunity has passed us for our children, this should be an important point. For them, the contribution they make to society should also be weighed by where they give their time and where they give their expertise. In building up communities successfully, we will then have the privilege to choose. When we don't, we have to take any opportunity that's presented to us, and that's the difference. So if we're talking about whether we're complicit or not, I don't know. It is not my place. First of all, because I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the data, and I don't know the intentions. So the point here is not to judge us or to say we are or we're not complicit, but it is to draw our attention to ways that we may be. And if we dig deep enough, we may find some answers. The second one that I wanted to draw your attention to, and I'll just mention it because we don't have time, is an article, same project, Cost of War project at Boston University, called Creating Refugees, Displacement Caused by the United States Post 9/11. This was written in September of 2020. Again, it speaks about the commercialization of war. Even in the welcoming of refugees, there's still money to be made. It is to draw our attention to that. So as far as the displacement numbers, we said 6 million collectively in this global war on terror, something about, this is the report that came out yesterday. That means there are updates to the reports that they made over a year ago, August 19th. They said using the 2020 calculations that they had for this year, an estimated 38 million people conservatively have been forced to leave their homes as a result of this project on the global war on terror. That's a problem for us, as is any other in the world. For our younger people, when we spoke about helping them find purpose. Environmental crisis is one of them. It's one of the challenges of our time. So too is this. Not just the displacement of refugees, but hopefully we'll get to the point to understand why we have refugees in the first place. There's something fundamentally wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in Surah Ash-Shu'ara, ayahs number 226 to 227. وَأَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وذكروا الله كثيرا وانتصروا من بعد ما ظلموا وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Speaking about mu'mineen as the exception to those who are creating mischief and destruction on the earth, they are those who say, they do what they say and say what they do. As for those who create destruction and oppression on the earth, soon shall they know the outcome of their mischief and their wrongdoing. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the return, the Imam of our time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring victory, to bring placement and not displacement across the world, especially our Muslim brothers and sisters who have been suffering and are suffering now. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to awaken us to our responsibilities individually and collectively, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ تواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما علي أمير المؤمنين والصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين والحسن والحسين سيدة شباب أهل الجنة والأئمة المسلمين والولد الحسين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي هججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتاب المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عباد الله اتقوا الله. Again, my brothers and sisters in Islam, in this second sermon, I admonish and encourage myself and all of you to the practice of taqwa. In 1 or 2 minutes that we have now an action item. In addition to educating ourselves, better understanding the realities of what these wars have done to the world, these wars have done to our families, these wars have done to our members of our community, to members of the Muslim Ummah and all humans across the world. What should we do? We said there are people who are being displaced, refugees. Very few of them actually have the opportunity to come here because we know a person who is disingenuous, a person who is cowardly, a person who is a liar, promises something but doesn't follow through. For the few of them that end up coming here out of deals that they were promised, and many of them that remain there to suffer with the consequences of the lies that they were fed, we as a community have an obligation and an opportunity to step up. Now, again, this may be a little more advanced in where we are in our community building, no problem. We can take small steps though. Because sometimes we like to do things when we're ready, and there's a logic to that. We have to go these first steps before we can get to more complex projects like refugee support. But we also have to remember the opportunity that is presented. Sometimes we have to respond to the realities on the ground. This is one of those realities. I don't want to be a hypocrite and say that I am a practitioner of supporting refugees because this is not something that just started today. It's been going on for a long time now. So long as these wars have been going on, so too has the support for refugees been needed. But this presents us with a new opportunity. Let us put our minds together and find ways at least to take one step when it comes to supporting individual families or being able to establish even the most basic of processes and institutions to support them. The Quran speaks about finding goodness. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. What is birr? In Surah Al-Baqarah, it states, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Goodness is not circumscribed to where you point your face in the direction of the east or the west. وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. Goodness is found through the fundamentals of believing in Allah, the final day, some responsibility, the angels, the book that has been revealed, the prophets that have been sent. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِ الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. And also for them to partition from their wealth out of the love that they have for Allah to the near ones, their relatives, to the orphans, and to the destitute, وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and those who are travelers and are stuck in their state of travel. I would imagine that those who are being displaced and are refugees would qualify as وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. The ayah continues to designate a number of different categories too. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. Again, the sadaqat, the alms that are to be given, are defined to be given to the needy, the poor, those who collect them, those whose hearts are to be reconciled, to free the captives and the debtors for the cause of Allah, and to those who are wayfarers, travelers. Let us put our sadaqat that we have right now to good use in supporting our Muslim brothers and sisters that need it most. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, of course, promised us anything we give in His way will be returned to us more than twofold. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enliven us, to inspire us, to motivate us to action, inshallah, collectively, that we may begin to plant the seeds of communal action that resembles the prophetic community, inshallah. اللهم إني أسألك بحق محمد وآل محمد صل على محمد وآل محمد واجعل النور في بصري والبصيرة في ديني واليقين في القلب والإخلاص في عملي والسلامة في ديني والسلامة في نفسي والسعة في رزقي والشكر لك أبدا ما أبقيتني. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك أنت الرؤوف الرحيم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فأقيموا الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. قوموا إلى الصلاة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
اللهم صل على محمد
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله عليه صلوات الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. Brothers and sisters, let's recite 5 times Amma Yajib. May Allah give shifa to all who are sick and also mu'minin who are in difficult times. May Allah relieve their difficulty, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء. 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه يكشف السوء برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد.
Momineen, a few quick announcements. A reminder for tonight's program for Ziyarat Majlis. The program will commence at 7 p.m. with Tilawat al-Quran and Soza Salam, followed by the Shaykh's speech at 7:20 and then Matamdari. The program will end with Salat al-Maghribain. An important announcement, in-person attendance for tonight's program will continue to be restricted to vaccinated individuals only. The Friday Salat message on WhatsApp mistakenly said that children of vaccinated families are allowed. We apologize for this error. Just to reiterate, in-person attendance for programs at CFK has been limited to vaccinated Momineen only. This difficult decision has been made after the careful deliberation of health experts. The safety of the community, especially our children, comes before anything else. Let us now recite a Fatiha for the marhumeen of the sponsors of today's niyaz, marhumeen of the anonymous donors, marhumeen who don't have anyone to pray for them, all our marhumeen and the marhumeen of the ummah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
استغفر الله ربي واتوب اليه. الله اكبر الله اكبر. اشهد ان لا اله الا الله اشهد ان لا اله الا الله اشهد ان محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد اشهد ان محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه واله وسلم. اشهد ان عليا ولي الله وانه حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. صلاة العصر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.